I'm Stephanie, 34, and I've always dreaded our family Christmas gatherings. Right now, I'm sitting in my childhood living room watching my sister Melissa's kids unwrap expensive Apple Watches while my mother Diana smiles approvingly. We all agreed not to do gifts this year, she says casually, as if I hadn't spent weeks stressing about this agreement after being laid off from my marketing job. The worst part isn't even the blatant favoritism, it's that nobody seems to notice the hypocrisy except me. Before I tell you how this holiday disaster unfolded and how I finally stood up for myself, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more real family drama that'll make yours seem normal in comparison. The layoff notice came 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. After 5 years at Wilson Marketing, no relation, despite sharing my last name, I was called into a sterile conference room where HR explained the company was restructuring. Translation: I was expendable. My position was being eliminated, and just like that, my steady income vanished right before the most expensive time of the year. My Chicago apartment, while small, still commanded a hefty rent that suddenly seemed impossibly steep. I had some savings, but not enough to feel secure while job hunting in a saturated market. Each morning, I'd wake up, check my depleting bank account, and spiral into anxiety about how long I could stay afloat. This financial stress was the backdrop to our family group chat pinging with holiday plans. My mother, Diana Wilson, sent her annual directive about Christmas at their Milwaukee home. Everyone will be here on the 24th. No excuses. Then came the message that initially felt like a blessing. We've all agreed not to do gifts this year. Times are tight for everyone, and we should focus on being together. I nearly cried with relief. My parents didn't know about my layoff yet. I couldn't bear the disappointment in their voices, and this no-gift policy meant I wouldn't have to explain why my presents were suddenly less impressive than previous years. You have to understand the dynamics at play here. In our family, I'd always been the runner-up to my sister Melissa. She's 38, married to Ryan, a corporate attorney whose salary funded their suburban mansion and Instagram-perfect lifestyle with their 2 children, Kaylee and Jason. Everything about Melissa's life seemed to satisfy our mother's vision of success, while my city apartment, marketing career, and recently ended relationship with Sam fell perpetually short. "When are you going to settle down like your sister?" was the refrain of every phone call with my mother. Marketing is fine, but law or medicine would have given you more stability. And my personal favorite, at your age, Melissa already had 2 children and a mortgage. As Christmas approached, I channeled my anxiety into baking. If I couldn't bring expensive gifts, I'd at least bring homemade cookies packaged in festive tins I found on clearance. The rhythm of measuring, mixing, and timing batches provided a temporary escape from job searching and rejection emails. The drive from Chicago to Milwaukee on December 24th gave me 3 hours to rehearse conversations and steel myself for the inevitable interrogation about my life. Snow dusted the highway, creating a deceptively serene landscape that contrasted with the knot in my stomach. I practiced responses in my car. Yes, I'm exploring new opportunities. No, I haven't met anyone since Sam. Yes, I'm fine living alone. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, Melissa's gleaming black SUV already occupied the prime spot nearest the door. My 10-year-old Honda looked particularly shabby next to it. Through the bay window, I could see the Christmas tree lights twinkling and silhouettes moving inside. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror, smoothed my hair, and grabbed the cookie tins, preparing to enter what always felt like a performance rather than a family gathering. The blast of warm air as I opened the front door carried the scent of pine, cinnamon, and my mother's signature roast. For a moment, childhood nostalgia overpowered my anxiety. There she is. My father George, 70 and silver-haired, appeared first, wrapping me in a bear hug that smelled of aftershave and whiskey. Dad had always been the buffer between Mom's criticisms and my feelings, though his peacekeeping usually manifested as silence rather than defense. Stephanie, finally, my mother emerged from the kitchen, perfectly coiffed at 67, eyeing me critically. "The drive doesn't take that long. We were about to start without you." "Traffic," I lied, knowing punctuality wouldn't have spared me the greeting. Well, you're here now, she glanced at the cookie tins. You brought sweets? You know your father's watching his sugar. Before I could respond, a squeal erupted as Kaylee, Melissa's 12-year-old daughter, bounded down the stairs. Aunt Stephanie. Her genuine enthusiasm momentarily lifted my spirits until my eyes drifted to the Christmas tree. Despite our no-gifts agreement, wrapped packages crowded beneath the branches, their shiny paper and elaborate bows mocking my cookie tins. Dinner that evening was an exercise in selective listening. My mother had prepared a feast: prime rib, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and 3 different desserts, all arranged on the formal china reserved for special occasions. The dining room gleamed with candles and a centerpiece of white roses, creating a picture-perfect scene that would have made Martha Stewart proud. "Melissa, that sweater is gorgeous," my mother commented as we settled into our assigned seats. The same arrangement we'd had since childhood, with Melissa and her family on one side, my parents at the ends, and me alone on the opposite side. Cashmere. Yes, Ryan surprised me with it last week. Melissa smoothed the material, shooting her husband an adoring glance. Early Christmas present. I glanced down at my own outfit, a forest green sweater from a department store sale 3 seasons ago, and busied myself with unfolding my napkin. "And how are things with you, Stephanie?" My father attempted to redirect the conversation. "Still enjoying the marketing world." Before I could answer, Melissa jumped in. "Did you see Jason's school play pictures I sent to the group chat? He was the lead tree in the forest scene." "He was magnificent," my mother gushed, completely abandoning Dad's question to me. "Such presence on stage." I told Margaret next door that he clearly inherited the Wilson artistic talent. "I started applying for some new positions, actually," I said, answering Dad's question despite the detour. "I'm looking for something with more growth potential." "Job hopping looks bad on a resume," my mother commented without looking up from cutting her meat. "Loyalty is what companies value." If only she knew the irony of that statement after my layoff. "The industry's changing, Mom. Most people my age have changed companies several times." "Well, Ryan's been with his firm for 12 years. She gestured toward my brother-in-law with her fork. "And look how well that's worked out. Just made partner last spring." Ryan cleared his throat uncomfortably. At least he had the decency to recognize the comparison was unfair. "Stephanie brought delicious cookies," my father interjected, his go-to peacekeeping strategy, changing the subject. Speaking of which, I seized the opportunity. I noticed there are presents under the tree. "I thought we agreed no gifts this year." An awkward silence descended on the table. Melissa glanced at our mother, who took a deliberate sip of wine before responding. "Just a few small things for the children," she said dismissively. "We couldn't have Christmas morning with nothing for them to open." "Jason and Kaylee understand that Christmas isn't just about presents," Melissa added quickly, though the statement was undermined by the mountain of gifts I'd glimpsed. "But they're still kids." Of course, I nodded, trying to mask my disappointment. I'd taken the no-gifts agreement seriously, partly from necessity, partly from principle. "I just wish I'd known. I would have brought something for them too." "Your cookies will be a lovely addition to our breakfast," my mother said in the tone that always made genuine contributions sound inadequate. "No one's keeping score, Stephanie." But that was precisely the problem. Someone was always keeping score in our family, and somehow, I was perpetually losing. After dinner, I volunteered to clean up, needing space from the conversation that had shifted to Melissa's upcoming ski trip to Aspen. In the kitchen, I could hear the continued chatter from the dining room, punctuated by laughter and the clink of wine glasses. As I rinsed dishes, I overheard my mother and sister in the hallway. "Did you pick up the extra things I asked for?" My mother's voice was hushed but clear. "Yes, everything's in the trunk," Melissa replied. "But are you sure this is a good idea?" Stephanie seemed upset about the gifts already. "She's always been sensitive," my mother dismissed. "We can't ruin Christmas for everyone else just because she's going through another one of her phases." "I know, but trust me, Melissa. She'll get over it like she always does." I stood frozen at the sink, hands submerged in soapy water as their voices faded. The familiar ache of being misunderstood, of being treated as an inconvenient emotional problem rather than a person with valid feelings, settled in my chest. I had been right. The no gifts rule had never been intended to include Melissa's family. It had been created, perhaps specifically for me. When I returned to the living room, Melissa was showing off photos from Jason's soccer championship on her phone while my mother cooed appropriately. Kaylee was teaching my father some complicated hand-clapping game, and Ryan was checking email on his phone. Stephanie, my mother looked up. We're thinking of opening one present each tonight, European style. What do you think? I thought it was another reminder that I hadn't brought gifts, but I smiled tightly. Whatever makes everyone happy. As Kaylee and Jason each selected a package, I excused myself to use the bathroom, unable to watch the ritual that would only emphasize my outsider status. In the hallway bathroom, I splashed water on my face and stared at my reflection. Just get through the next 24 hours, I whispered to myself. Then you can go home. But home was a quiet apartment with bills I wasn't sure I could pay next month. And as the sound of delighted squeals echoed from the living room, I wondered if I'd ever had a place where I truly belonged. Christmas morning arrived with the sound of excited footsteps pounding down the hallway. Despite being in my 30s, I still slept in my childhood bedroom during visits, unchanged since high school with its debate team trophies and faded posters of bands I'd long outgrown. The twin bed left my back aching, a physical manifestation of how I'd outgrown this space in every way. I checked my phone, 7:15 a.m. No normal adult would be awake this early on a holiday, but Kaylee and Jason's excitement apparently couldn't be contained. Melissa had always been an early riser too, something our mother praised as ambitious, while my tendency to sleep in was labeled lazy. After brushing my teeth and changing into jeans and a red sweater, festive enough to avoid criticism, I made my way downstairs. The living room had transformed overnight. What had been a modest display of gifts beneath the tree had multiplied exponentially. Wrapped boxes now spilled beyond the tree skirt, categorized into piles with gift tags visible. The largest mountains belonged to Kaylee and Jason. And Stephanie. Santa came. Jason's face glowed with anticipation as he bounced on his knees beside his pile. Wow, looks like you both were very good this year, I managed, catching my mother's eye. She was already dressed in a festive cashmere set, sipping coffee from a china cup. Coffee's fresh, she said, ignoring my pointed look at the gifts. Your father's just getting dressed. Melissa emerged from the kitchen with Ryan, both carrying steaming mugs. Morning, sis. Sleep okay in the old room? Fine, I lied, accepting a mug of coffee from Ryan, who at least had the grace to look slightly embarrassed about the gift extravaganza before us. Once Dad appeared, permission was granted for the unwrapping to begin. What followed was a blur of torn paper, exclamations, and a growing knot in my stomach. Kaylee received a designer coat, jewelry, and a tablet. Jason unwrapped expensive Lego sets, sports equipment, and gaming accessories. Then came the adult gifts. My father presented my mother with a diamond bracelet that made her eyes widen with genuine surprise. George, we said no gifts, she protested weakly, though her delight was obvious as she immediately put it on. Just a little something, he winked. My parents gave Melissa and Ryan a weekend getaway package to a luxury spa resort. Ryan gave Melissa a pair of sapphire earrings that complemented her eyes. Even my father received a new set of golf clubs from Melissa and Ryan, which he immediately began examining with boyish excitement. Throughout this display, I sat cross-legged on the floor, clutching my coffee mug like a shield. No one seemed to notice or care that I had no gifts to open or give, honoring the agreement that apparently only applied to me. Then my mother disappeared briefly, returning with a small, hastily wrapped package that she handed to me with a casual, almost forgot this. Inside was a navy blue scarf with the department store tag still attached, showing it had been purchased on clearance. It wasn't even cashmere like Melissa's, just regular wool that irritated my skin. Thank you, I said automatically. It's nice. I saw it and thought of you, my mother replied, though everything about the gift suggested last-minute obligation rather than thoughtful selection. As I carefully folded the scarf, Melissa handed her children two final packages, identical boxes wrapped in glossy silver paper with elaborate bows. "Save the best for last," she smiled, recording their reactions on her phone. The children tore into the packages with renewed enthusiasm, and their squeals reached new decibels as they revealed matching Apple Watches, the latest models with all the premium features. "Oh my God. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Kaylee jumped up and down while Jason immediately started examining all the functions. And that's when my mother delivered the line that would become the catalyst for everything that followed. "We all agreed not to do gifts this year," she said with a light laugh, watching her grandchildren's joy with transparent satisfaction. The statement hung in the air like a slap, acknowledging the agreement while simultaneously celebrating its violation. My body went hot, then cold. The blatant hypocrisy was so profound that for a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined the whole no gifts conversation. But I hadn't. It had been explicit, in writing, in our family group chat. I could still see my mother's message: "We've all agreed not to do gifts this year. Times are tight for everyone, and we should focus on being together." "I need some air," I mumbled, setting down my coffee cup and grabbing my jacket from the hall closet. No one protested or even seemed to notice as I slipped out the front door into the crisp winter morning. Outside, snow had fallen overnight, transforming the neighborhood into a greeting card scene. I walked without direction, my boots crunching through the fresh powder, breath-forming clouds in the cold air. Memories flooded back with each step, childhood Christmases where Melissa's pile of gifts always towered over mine. My mother explaining that Melissa needed more things. My achievements downplayed while Melissa's were celebrated with parties and presents. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my friend Lauren back in Chicago. "Merry Christmas. How's the family circus going?" I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I explain this situation without sounding petty? My wealthy sister bought her kids Apple Watches while I brought cookies because we agreed no gifts. Even the truth sounded like jealousy rather than legitimate hurt. When I returned to the house an hour later, everyone had moved on. The living room was a wasteland of discarded wrapping paper, with Melissa documenting the scene for social media. Jason and Kaylee were already engrossed in their new devices, while Ryan casually mentioned their upcoming ski trip to Aspen. "Such a shame you can't join us, Stephanie," he said, though no invitation had ever been extended. "The slopes are supposed to be perfect this year." "I'll be busy job hunting," I replied, the words escaping before I could stop them. The room fell silent. "Job hunting?" My mother's brow furrowed. "What happened to your position at Wilson?" And so the truth came out: the layoff, my financial concerns, the reason the no gifts agreement had been such a relief to me. As I explained, I watched their expressions shift from surprise to that particular blend of pity and judgment my family had perfected. "You should have told us," my mother said, though her tone suggested my failure to share had been a deliberate withholding rather than self-protection. "Why? So you could tell me how Melissa never gets laid off." The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "That's not fair," Melissa interjected. "I've worked hard for my stability." "And I haven't." I challenged. "No one's saying that," my father attempted mediation. "You could have asked us for help," my mother added, though we both knew such help would have come with strings and comparisons. "Like you helped Melissa with the down payment on her house? Or the private school tuition for the kids?" "That's different," my mother dismissed. "They have a family to support. And I don't matter because I'm single." The question hung in the air, unanswered, because the answer was painfully obvious. I retreated upstairs to my childhood bedroom, finding an old journal in the desk drawer. Flipping through pages of teenage angst, I found repeated themes: feeling invisible, trying to measure up, never quite meeting expectations. 20 years later, nothing had fundamentally changed. The rest of the day passed in strained politeness. I helped prepare Christmas dinner, nodding and smiling at appropriate intervals while Melissa dominated conversation with stories about the children's accomplishments and Ryan's recent work victory. My layoff wasn't mentioned again, swept under the rug like all uncomfortable topics in our family. As evening approached, I scrolled through social media, finding that Melissa had already posted perfectly staged photos of the day, her children with their Apple Watches, the beautiful table setting, the family gathered around the tree. The carefully curated images revealed nothing of the undercurrents and tension. According to Instagram, we were the perfect American family celebrating a perfect Christmas. The gap between perception and reality had never felt wider. Dinner preparations brought a false sense of normalcy. In the kitchen, I fell into familiar rhythms with my mother and Melissa, chopping vegetables, basting the turkey, arranging serving dishes. If you'd taken a snapshot of that moment, we might have looked like any loving family preparing a holiday meal together. The illusion shattered when Melissa mentioned their New Year plans. "We're so excited for Aspen next week," she said, arranging cranberry sauce in a crystal dish. "The resort has this amazing children's program, so Ryan and I can actually enjoy adult time on the slopes." "How wonderful," my mother beamed. "The children deserve that experience." "We could only book 5 days because of the cost," Melissa continued. "Even with Ryan's bonus, the holiday rates are insane." I bit my tongue, focusing intently on the potatoes I was mashing. The casual mention of Ryan's year-end bonus, which I knew from previous conversations was substantial, in the same breath as a complaint about affordability felt particularly tone-deaf given my newly revealed unemployment. "Speaking of travel," my mother turned to me, "Stephanie, since you have free time now, perhaps you could house-sit for us when we visit your aunt in Florida next month? The security system has been acting up, and we'd feel better having someone there." The implication was clear. My joblessness made me available for family errands, while Melissa's family was too busy with their important lives to be imposed upon. "I'll be focused on my job search, Mom," I replied, adding more butter to the potatoes than the recipe called for, a small rebellion. "I can't commit to being out of Chicago for that long." "It's not like interviews are happening every day," she countered. "You could bring your laptop and search from here. The change of scenery might do you good." Before I could respond, the conversation shifted to the children's private school achievements. "Jason's teacher says he's reading 2 grade levels above average," Melissa announced. "They're putting him in the accelerated program next semester." "Wilson Intelligence," my father nodded proudly. "And Kaylee's art was selected for the district showcase," Melissa continued. "Just like you, Mom." I remembered my own academic achievements being met with expected nods rather than celebration. My full scholarship to Northwestern had been acknowledged with, "Well, that makes financial sense," while Melissa's acceptance to a less prestigious school had warranted a champagne dinner. "Stephanie was always book-smart too," my mother added, as if remembering my presence, though she struggled with practical application. "I managed a 6-figure marketing budget at Wilson," I pointed out, the potato masher moving more aggressively in my hands. "Yes, and that's nice," my mother's tone managed to diminish the accomplishment. "But secure employment is more valuable than impressive titles, as you're discovering." Melissa shot me what she probably thought was a sympathetic look. "You know, if you're struggling, I could talk to the manager at Nordstrom. They're always looking for sales associates after the holidays. The employee discount is amazing." And there it was, the offer of help that wasn't help at all, but a reminder of our perceived positions. Melissa, the successful one, could help me find retail work beneath my qualifications and education. I felt something inside me crack. "I have a master's degree in marketing, Melissa. I don't need a sales associate position." "I was just trying to help," she replied, her voice taking on the wounded tone she'd perfected since childhood, the one that inevitably made me the villain. "No need to snap at me. Stephanie, your sister is being generous," my mother admonished. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, when my mother delivered the final blow. "Oh, before I forget to mention it, we're helping Melissa and Ryan with their kitchen renovation next spring," she said casually, stirring gravy on the stove. "Not really a Christmas gift, just helping out. The contractor Dad knows is giving them a wonderful deal." The renovation they'd been talking about for months, the one with the imported Italian marble and custom cabinetry, would cost more than I made in a year. And here was my mother, who had insisted on no gifts because times are tight, casually mentioning financial support that would likely run into 6 figures. The heirloom serving dish I was holding slipped from my hands, crashing to the floor and shattering into dozens of pieces. Stephanie. My mother gasped. That was your grandmother's. Something inside me shattered along with that dish. 20+ years of suppressed feelings erupted without warning. Of course it's my fault, I said, voice quivering. Everything is always my fault, isn't it? The scapegoat for the perfect family. What are you talking about? Melissa asked, genuinely confused, which somehow made it worse. The dynamic was so normalized that she couldn't even see it. We agreed no gifts, I said, meeting my mother's eyes directly. You suggested it. You put it in writing. And yet somehow, that rule only applied to me. You're overreacting, my mother dismissed. No one's keeping score but you. Keeping score? Mom, look around. Melissa's kids got Apple Watches while you gave me a clearance scarf that still had the tag on it. You're giving them a kitchen renovation while I'm worried about making rent after being laid off. And then you have the audacity to suggest I house sit for you because my time apparently has no value. My father appeared in the doorway, alarmed by the rising voices. What's going on? Stephanie's having one of her moments, my mother explained, as if I were an unruly child rather than a grown woman with legitimate grievances. My moments? I laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. You know what? I've spent my entire life trying to earn the approval you give Melissa freely. I've achieved everything I set out to do, graduated with honors, built a career, created an independent life, and none of it has ever been enough for you. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. Isn't it? When has anything I've done been celebrated the way you celebrate Melissa's family? When have my accomplishments not been immediately compared to hers and found wanting? When have I ever been enough just as I am? The kitchen fell silent. Jason and Kaylee had appeared behind my father, their eyes wide as they witnessed the unraveling of the careful facade our family had maintained. I think you need to calm down, Melissa suggested in her placating tone. You're upset about the job situation, and that's understandable, but this isn't about the job, Melissa. This is about a lifetime of being treated like I'm less than you. And the worst part is, I don't even blame you for it. This is about Mom and Dad creating a dynamic where one of us was always going to lose. I grabbed my coat from the hall closet, hands shaking. Stephanie, don't be ridiculous. Where are you going? My mother demanded. It's Christmas dinner. I'm done, I said simply, feeling a strange calm replace the anger. I'm done pretending we're a healthy family. I'm done being the only one who sees the dysfunction. I'm done trying to earn love that should be unconditional. You can't just leave. My mother's voice held an edge of panic, not because she was concerned about me, I realized, but because my departure would disrupt the perfect family narrative. Actually, I can. That's the one benefit of being the family disappointment. My absence probably won't even register once you've had a chance to discuss how dramatic I am. I walked out the door into the cold December evening, ignoring the calls of my name behind me. In my car, I finally allowed the tears to come, hot and fast down my cheeks as I drove aimlessly through the neighborhood where I'd grown up. I ended up at Jefferson Park, deserted in the winter darkness except for the colored lights strung around the pavilion. Sitting on a frigid bench, I let myself cry until no more tears would come. My phone buzzed repeatedly, texts from my father asking me to return, followed by demands from my mother that I apologize for ruining Christmas. Nothing from Melissa, which didn't surprise me. The revelation wasn't that my family treated me differently, I'd known that for years. The revelation was that I didn't have to accept it anymore. I didn't have to participate in a dynamic that diminished me. I didn't have to pretend that unequal treatment was normal or fair. As the snow began to fall again, I made a decision. I wouldn't return to that house tonight, or maybe ever. The budget and off the highway wasn't where I'd envisioned spending Christmas night, but its vacancy sign glowed like a beacon as I drove aimlessly through Milwaukee's outskirts. The room was basic, queen bed, laminate dresser, TV with limited channels, but it was clean and, more importantly, mine. No childhood memories lurked in the corners, no family photos watched with judging eyes. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, scrolling through the mounting notifications. 3 missed calls from Dad. A voicemail from Mom that I couldn't bring myself to listen to yet. Multiple texts from both of them ranging from concerned to irritated. Nothing from Melissa. Her silence spoke volumes about where her loyalties lay. Finally, I called the one person who would understand. Lauren? I know it's Christmas, but I really need to talk. My best friend since college answered on the second ring. Steph? What's wrong? You sound terrible. For the next hour, I poured out everything, the Apple Watches, the kitchen renovation, years of subtle put-downs, and double standards culminating in my dramatic exit during Christmas dinner. Lauren listened without interrupting, allowing me the space to untangle the complex web of emotions I'd been suppressing for decades. I always knew your relationship with your family was strained, she said when I finally paused for breath, but I had no idea how deeply it ran. You deserve better, Steph. Do I, though? Despite my justified anger, doubt crept in. What if I'm overreacting? What if I'm just jealous of Melissa's success? Stop right there, Lauren's voice was firm. Having feelings isn't overreacting. And this isn't about jealousy, it's about being treated with basic respect and fairness. Would you ever treat someone you love the way they've treated you? The question hit me like a physical force. No. Never. Then why accept it for yourself? After hanging up, I opened Instagram almost reflexively. A masochistic impulse to see Melissa's curated version of our Christmas. Sure enough, she'd posted since my departure, a perfectly staged family photo around the dinner table, everyone smiling as if I'd never been there at all. The caption read, "Another perfect Wilson family Christmas. So blessed to celebrate with the people who matter most. Hashtag familiarize everything, hashtag Christmas joy." The comments section overflowed with heart emojis and declarations of what a beautiful family they were. The gap between this polished presentation and the messy reality I'd just fled made me feel like I was losing my grip on sanity. Had I imagined the whole confrontation? Was I the problem? I closed the app and opened my laptop instead, finding myself typing "family scapegoat" into the search bar. What followed was hours of reading about family dynamics, roles, and patterns that felt like someone had been observing my life and documenting it with clinical precision. The scapegoat versus the golden child. Conditional versus unconditional love. Emotional manipulation. Gaslighting. Words that gave shape to experiences I'd never been able to articulate. I remembered my therapist in Chicago, whom I'd stopped seeing 6 months ago when money got tight, mentioning family systems during one session. At the time, I dismissed it as psychological jargon. Now, I wished I'd paid more attention. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of childhood disappointments and adult failures. I woke at dawn, momentarily disoriented in the unfamiliar room before reality crashed back. Christmas was over, but the aftermath of my outburst awaited. I showered and changed into yesterday's clothes, then sat at the small desk by the window to compose a text message to my family. The first draft was angry, the second defensive, the third apologetic. I deleted them all. Whatever I said would be twisted, misinterpreted, or dismissed entirely. The pattern was too entrenched to break with a single message. Instead, I focused on practical matters. I needed to retrieve my belongings from my parents' house. I needed to drive back to Chicago. I needed to continue my job search with renewed urgency. One step at a time, one day at a time. Before checkout, I treated myself to breakfast at the diner next door, a small act of self-care amid the emotional chaos. The waitress, a woman about my mother's age, commented on my solitary state. "No family to celebrate with, honey." I considered the complexity of that question before answering. "I'm taking some space to figure out what family means to me." She nodded as if this made perfect sense. Sometimes the family you choose is more important than the one you're born into. Refill on the coffee. That simple exchange, with a stranger who owed me nothing, contained more genuine understanding than I'd felt from my mother in years. As I drove back toward my parents' house, I formulated a plan. I would collect my things, express my feelings clearly one final time, and establish boundaries for future interactions. I wouldn't expect understanding or validation; those hopes had been repeatedly dashed. Instead, I would focus on what I could control: my own behavior, responses, and boundaries. The knot in my stomach tightened as my parents' house came into view, but alongside the anxiety was something new: resolve. Whatever awaited me inside, I would face it as the adult I was, not the child they still treated me as. For the first time in my life, I wasn't seeking their approval or acceptance. I was claiming my own value independent of their assessment. The realization didn't erase the pain of lifelong dynamics, but it offered a path forward that didn't depend on them changing, because the evidence suggested they never would. I parked in the driveway, took a deep breath, and prepared to face whatever came next. The house looked exactly as I'd left it, Christmas lights still twinkling in the front windows. A visual reminder that less than 24 hours had passed since my dramatic exit, though it felt like weeks. I used my key rather than knocking, a small assertion of belonging despite everything that had transpired. The living room fell silent as I entered. My father sat in his recliner, newspaper lowered at my arrival. My mother and Melissa were on the couch, heads together over coffee mugs that they set down in unison. Ryan was notably absent, as were the children, probably upstairs with their new devices. "Well, look who decided to come back." My mother's tone carried both relief and reproach. "We were worried sick." I noted she led with guilt rather than concern for my well-being. Typical. "I came for my things," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I'm driving back to Chicago today." "Don't be ridiculous," she dismissed. "You always do this, create drama, and then run away instead of resolving things like an adult." The familiar accusation might have once sent me into a defensive spiral, but now I recognized it for what it was: manipulation designed to shift blame and maintain control. "I'm not running away, Mom. I'm making a conscious choice to remove myself from a situation that's harmful to me." "Harmful?" Melissa scoffed. "You're so dramatic. It was just Christmas dinner." "It wasn't just Christmas dinner," I said, meeting her eyes directly. "It was one more example of a pattern that's existed our entire lives. You're the golden child, I'm the scapegoat, and Mom and Dad have reinforced those roles at every opportunity." "That's absurd," my mother interjected. "We've always treated you both equally." "Have you?" I kept my voice calm despite the anger simmering beneath. "Equal would be both of us following the no gifts rule, not just me. Equal would be celebrating my accomplishments the way you celebrate Melissa's. Equal would be offering me the same financial support you give her family without question." My father cleared his throat. "Stephanie, I think you're misunderstanding." "I'm not misunderstanding anything, Dad. I've spent my entire life trying to earn the love and approval you give Melissa freely. The difference is, I see it clearly now." I turned to address them all. "I'm not here to convince you to change or to make you see what you've done. I've realized you may never acknowledge the dynamic you've created. I'm here to tell you that I'm setting boundaries from now on." "Boundaries?" My mother practically spat the word. "What does that even mean?" "It means I won't participate in gatherings where I'm treated as less than. It means I expect basic respect and fairness. It means I'll limit my contact if these conditions aren't met." Tears welled in my mother's eyes, not tears of understanding, but the theatrical display that had always worked to regain control when she felt it slipping. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By threatening to cut us off." "I'm not threatening anything, Mom. I'm telling you what I need to maintain a relationship with you. The choice to respect those needs is yours." "So selfish," she whispered, though loud enough for everyone to hear. "Always thinking about yourself." A laugh escaped me, genuine if slightly bitter. "That's rich coming from you. When have you ever considered my feelings before your own comfort or Melissa's preferences?" My father stood, assuming his familiar role as peacekeeper. "Let's all just calm down. Stephanie, no one wanted you to feel excluded yesterday. We can fix this." "This isn't something you can fix with a band-aid solution, Dad. This is decades of patterns that need to change." "You're acting like we've abused you," Melissa's indignation flared. "We're a normal family with normal disagreements. Normal families don't consistently favor one child over another. Normal families don't dismiss one member's feelings while centering another's. Normal families don't say no gifts and then exchange expensive presents while excluding one person." A small voice from the doorway interrupted our standoff. "Aunt Stephanie's right." We all turned to see Kaylee standing there, arms crossed over her chest in an unconscious mirror of my stance. At 12, she was already showing signs of the woman she would become, observant, principled, and brave in ways I hadn't been at her age. Kaylee, go back upstairs. This doesn't concern you, Melissa ordered. But it does, Kaylee insisted, stepping fully into the room. I noticed it too. Grandma and Grandpa always make a bigger deal about our stuff than Aunt Stephanie's. And the no gifts thing was weird. You told me and Jason we couldn't tell Aunt Stephanie about our presents until after Christmas. A flush crept up Melissa's neck. That's not, we just didn't want her to feel bad because she couldn't afford gifts this year. So you acknowledge the rule was created specifically for me because of assumptions about my financial situation, not as a family-wide agreement. I asked, grateful for Kaylee's unexpected alliance. I didn't say that, Melissa backpedaled. You literally just did, Kaylee pointed out with the unfiltered honesty of pre-adolescence. Mom, you always say honesty is important, but this doesn't seem honest. An uncomfortable silence followed. My mother's tears had mysteriously dried in the face of this new development. My father looked torn between pride in his granddaughter's perception and discomfort at having family dynamics exposed so plainly. I think, he said slowly, there might be some truth to what Stephanie is saying. My mother turned to him, betrayal written across her features. George. Diana, look at what's happening here. Our own granddaughter sees it. Maybe it's time we listened instead of defending. It wasn't a full acknowledgement, but it was the first crack in the unified front they'd always presented. My mother's face cycled through emotions, shock, anger, denial, before settling into a rigid mask. I've only ever wanted what's best for this family, she said stiffly. I believe you think that's true, I replied, softening slightly. But your idea of best has always centered Melissa's family while minimizing me. I can't accept that anymore. So what now? Melissa asked, genuine uncertainty in her voice for perhaps the first time in our adult relationship. You just leave. I'm going back to Chicago today. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. And when I am, it will be on different terms. I went upstairs to pack my overnight bag, gathering the few belongings I'd brought for what was supposed to be a 2-day stay. When I returned downstairs, Ryan had joined the group, looking uncomfortable as families do when witnessing another family's private implosion. Stephanie, he said awkwardly, about the Apple Watches and everything, it wasn't right. I should have said something. It wasn't much, but his acknowledgement felt significant in a room where denial had been the primary response. My mother remained silent as I prepared to leave, her disapproval radiating in waves. My father helped carry my bag to the car, using the moment of privacy to speak. I've never been good at standing up to your mother, he admitted. But I want you to know I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Maybe it's time I did the same. I'd like that, Dad, I said, surprised by his candor. Back at the house, I said goodbye to Kaylee and Jason, who had emerged from upstairs. I hugged them both tightly. I love you both very much, I told them. The grown-up stuff that's happening doesn't change that. Will we see you again? Jason asked, his new Apple Watch incongruous on his small wrist. Of course you will, I assured him. Things will just be a little different. As I drove away, the rearview mirror framed my family standing in the doorway, mother rigid with displeasure, father uncertain, Melissa confused, children waving. It wasn't the clean break of movie dramatics, nor was it the tearful reconciliation of holiday specials. It was messy, incomplete, and distinctly real. I called Lauren as soon as I hit the highway. I did it, I said when she answered. I stood up for myself. I am so damn proud of you, she replied. How do you feel? I considered the question seriously. Like I can breathe again. The sensation of freedom, unfamiliar but welcome, carried me all the way back to Chicago. New Year's Eve arrived less than a week after my Christmas confrontation, though it felt like months had passed. Rather than attending my parents' traditional gathering, to which I hadn't been invited anyway, I was hosting a small celebration in my Chicago apartment with Lauren and our friend Marcus. To burning bridges that needed to burn, Lauren raised her glass of supermarket Prosecco, all we could afford, but it sparkled just the same. And to building new ones, Marcus added, clinking his glass against mine. My apartment, while small, felt like a sanctuary after the emotional battlefield of my parents' house. I'd spent the days since Christmas cleaning, rearranging furniture, and creating a vision board activities that cost nothing but gave me a sense of control over my environment and future. The television murmured in the background, crowds gathering in Times Square for the ball drop, while we sat on cushions around my coffee table playing board games and sharing resolutions. I want to hear more about this confrontation, Marcus said, refilling our glasses. Lauren says you went full Joan of Arc on your family. Less burning at the stake, more burning of unhealthy patterns, I corrected with a small smile. Though my mother probably feels martyred. As I recounted the story, my phone pinged with a text notification. I expected another guilt-laden message from my mother, who had alternated between icy silence and emotional manipulation since my departure. Instead, I found a message from Kaylee. Happy New Year, Aunt Steph. Things have been weird since you left. Grandma cries a lot and Mom seems mad, but Dad said you did a brave thing. Can we still talk sometimes even if the grown-ups are fighting? The simple message brought tears to my eyes. My niece, I explained, showing them the text. Apparently my exit created quite the aftermath. Good, Lauren said firmly. Family systems don't change without disruption. I carefully composed my reply to Kaylee. Happy New Year to you too. Of course we can still talk. The grown-up stuff is complicated, but my love for you and Jason isn't. We'll figure it out. As midnight approached, my phone rang unexpectedly. My father's name appeared on the screen. Should I answer? I asked my friends. Your call, Marcus said. But remember your boundaries. I accepted the call, stepping onto my small balcony for privacy despite the Chicago winter chill. Stephanie. My father's voice sounded different, uncertain, but somehow clearer than usual. Hi, Dad. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, he replied. I wanted to call before midnight. Are you celebrating with friends? Yes, just a small thing at my apartment. A pause. Your mother doesn't know I'm calling. This admission surprised me. My father had never defied my mother's wishes in my memory. I've been thinking about what you said, he continued. About patterns and treatment. I've been watching for it since you left, and you were right. I never noticed because it didn't affect me directly, but now I can't unsee it. The validation I'd never expected brought a lump to my throat. Thank you for saying that, Dad. I'm not good at this emotional stuff, he admitted. But I'm trying to do better. I told your mother I want us to see a family therapist. She refused at first, but I'm standing firm. Wow, Dad. That's huge. It's just a start, he said. I don't expect you to come back until things change. I just wanted you to know that your words made a difference, at least to me. After we hung up, I stood on the balcony a moment longer, watching my breath form clouds in the night air. It wasn't a Hollywood resolution, no grand apology from my mother, no dramatic family reunion. But it was a crack in the foundation, a small opening for light to enter. When I returned inside, Lauren looked at me questioningly. My dad, I explained. He's actually trying to change things. That's something, she nodded. But remember, you don't have to rush back just because they show a glimmer of improvement. I know, I agreed. My worth isn't determined by their recognition of it. As the countdown to midnight began on television, I reflected on how differently this evening might have gone. In previous years, I would have been at my parents' gathering, smiling through subtle jabs about my career, relationship status, and life choices while Melissa shone in the spotlight. I would have driven home feeling diminished, questioning my value, replaying every interaction for clues to earn more approval next time. Instead, I was surrounded by people who accepted me as I was, celebrating not only a new year but a new chapter where I defined my worth rather than seeking external validation. My phone pinged again, an email notification that momentarily jolted me from reflection. The subject line read, Interview request, Marketing Director position. It was from a boutique agency I'd applied to weeks ago, requesting a meeting the following week. The timing felt symbolic, a reminder that opportunities arise when we create space for them. Marcus began pouring champagne as the final countdown commenced. 10, 9, 8. Lauren squeezed my hand. Whatever happens with your family, you've already won. 7, 6, 5. The future remained uncertain. My job situation precarious, family relationships in flux, financial concerns still pressing. But for the first time in memory, I felt genuine hope rather than anxiety about what lay ahead. 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! As we clinked glasses and exchanged hugs, I silently toasted the version of myself who had finally stood up in that kitchen on Christmas Day. The self who had recognized that sometimes, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to say enough. Later, as my friends helped clean up before heading home, I noticed a small package Lauren had slipped onto my bookshelf, a journal with a note attached, for recording your new chapter. No one else gets to write your story anymore. I cleared space on my closet shelf, removing old sweaters and scarves I'd kept trying to please my mother's sense of appropriate attire. In their place, I hung clothes that reflected my own style and comfort. A small act of reclamation, but significant nonetheless. As January unfolded, I maintained minimal contact with my family, brief, informative texts rather than the detailed updates and check-ins my mother had always demanded. Each small boundary held was a victory, each day without yielding to guilt the step toward healing. When the marketing director position led to an actual job offer with better pay and culture than my previous role, I shared the news selectively, with friends who celebrated genuinely, not with family who would qualify their congratulations with comparisons or cautions. The gift of self-respect I had given myself at Christmas continued to unfold in unexpected ways, creating space for authentic connections and opportunities that the people-pleasing version of me might never have recognized or embraced. 3 months after the Christmas confrontation, spring arrived in Chicago with surprising warmth. Trees along my street budded with delicate green, mirroring the new growth in my own life. The marketing director position had evolved into a challenging but fulfilling role, with colleagues who valued my contributions without constant comparison. Financially, I had regained stability, not the extravagance of Melissa's lifestyle, but enough to cover my expenses with a small cushion for emergencies. More importantly, I had established a new relationship with myself, one built on self-validation rather than external approval. My contact with my parents had settled into a manageable rhythm. A weekly phone call with my father, who continued to work on recognizing and changing family patterns, and monthly brief exchanges with my mother, who remained resistant but was making small efforts under my father's unexpected influence. She asked if you'd like to join us for Easter, my father mentioned during our most recent call. But she understands if you're not ready. The invitation itself represented progress, acknowledging my agency rather than assuming my attendance or guilt-tripping my absence. I had declined gently, suggesting coffee with just the two of them during my next visit to Milwaukee instead. Smaller gatherings felt safer while we navigated our new dynamic. Melissa had been the greatest surprise in the aftermath. After weeks of silence following Christmas, she had sent an email that began awkwardly but evolved into something approaching genuine. I've been thinking about what you said. At first, I was just angry and hurt, but then I started paying attention to how Mom treats us differently. I never saw it before because it benefited me, I guess. Ryan says I've been blind to it because it was easier than acknowledging the unfairness. I don't know how to fix everything between us, but I'd like to try to have a relationship that isn't defined by Mom's comparisons. We had graduated to occasional text exchanges, carefully navigating toward a relationship independent of our parents' influence. She had even asked my advice about a work situation recently, a small but significant acknowledgement of my expertise in an area where she struggled. The most meaningful connection, however, had been with Kaylee and Jason. I made a point of sending them cards for no reason, asking about their interests without comparison to others, celebrating their unique qualities. When Kaylee's 13th birthday approached in April, Melissa extended an unexpected invitation. We're having a small party at the house. Just family and a few friends. It would mean a lot to Kaylee if you could come. The prospect of returning to the site of our Christmas confrontation triggered anxiety, but Kaylee's follow-up text sealed my decision. Please come, Aunt Stephanie. I've been working on a photography project I want to show you. No one else really gets it. And so, on a sunny Saturday, I found myself driving back to Milwaukee, a carefully chosen gift on my passenger seat, a vintage film camera I'd found at a secondhand shop, perfect for Kaylee's budding interest in photography. The price had been reasonable, the thoughtfulness immeasurable. Melissa answered the door with visible nervousness. "Thanks for coming," she said, awkwardly hovering between a hug and a handshake before settling on a brief embrace. "Mom and Dad are already here." I took a deep breath before entering the living room where my parents sat. My mother's eyes registered a complex mix of emotions upon seeing me: relief, apprehension, the struggle between habitual criticism and conscious restraint. "Stephanie," she acknowledged with a nod. "You look well." Coming from her, the neutral observation without critique was practically effusive praise. "Thank you." "You too, Mom." My father hugged me warmly. "Good to see you, kiddo." The initial tension gradually eased as more guests arrived, Kaylee's friends and their parents, creating buffer zones of normal conversation. I found myself relaxing incrementally, navigating the gathering with new confidence in my boundaries. When Kaylee opened my gift, her genuine delight validated my choice. "This is amazing. How did you know I wanted a film camera?" "You mentioned being interested in old-school photography in one of our texts," I explained. "Digital is convenient, but there's something special about film. It makes you think more carefully about each shot, appreciate the process." "That's exactly what I was trying to explain to Mom," Kaylee exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. Across the room, I caught my mother watching this exchange, an unreadable expression on her face. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away, but not before I glimpsed something that might have been regret. Later, as guests began to depart, she approached me in the kitchen where I was helping clean up. "The camera was a thoughtful gift," she said stiffly. Kaylee was very pleased. "Thank you." I thought she'd appreciate it. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us before she added, "Your father says I should acknowledge that you were right about some things at Christmas." It wasn't quite an apology, but from a woman who had never admitted fault in her life, it represented significant effort. "I appreciate that, Mom. I don't understand why you couldn't just accept things as they were," she continued, revealing the limits of her self-reflection. "But I do want you in our lives." "I want that too," I said carefully, "but on different terms than before. I need respect and equal treatment, not just inclusion on your conditions." She nodded tightly, clearly struggling with concepts that challenged her entire worldview. "I'm trying. That's all I ask," I replied honestly. As I prepared to leave, Kaylee insisted on showing me her room, a sanctuary of creative expression where photographs and art covered the walls. Unlike the rest of Melissa's perfectly coordinated home, this space reflected genuine personality rather than curated perfection. "Mom says you're teaching her about boundaries," Kaylee remarked casually as she showed me her photography portfolio. "She's different since Christmas. Less worried about what Grandma thinks." The observation from this perceptive, almost teenager confirmed what I'd begun to suspect: my stand had created ripples affecting more than just my direct relationships. By refusing to participate in unhealthy dynamics, I had inadvertently given Melissa permission to question them too. Driving back to Chicago that evening, I reflected on the journey of the past few months. The Christmas confrontation hadn't magically transformed my family into the supportive, equitable unit I'd always longed for. My mother still struggled with favoritism, my father with assertiveness, Melissa with awareness of her privilege. But cracks had formed in the rigid system that had constrained us all. Light was entering through those cracks, illuminating possibilities for healthier connections. The process was ongoing, often uncomfortable, occasionally disappointing, but ultimately hopeful. The no-gifts Christmas that had initially felt like another slight had become the catalyst for necessary change. The most valuable gift I'd received wasn't wrapped under any tree. It was the courage to stand up for myself, to define my worth independently of others' assessment. As the skyline of Chicago came into view, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for most of my adult life. The road ahead would have its challenges. Family healing is never linear or complete, but for the first time, I was traveling it on my own terms, guided by self-respect rather than the desperate need for approval. Sometimes the most meaningful gifts aren't things at all, but moments of truth that change everything that follows. My Christmas catastrophe had ultimately given me something no Apple Watch could provide, the freedom to write my own story. Has your family ever had double standards or unspoken rules that affected you? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear they're not alone in their family struggles. Remember, sometimes the healthiest gift you can give yourself is the courage to set boundaries. Thank you for watching, and I wish you strength on your own journey toward authentic relationships.